As oil prices skyrocket, and also natural gas prices, especially here in North America and Great Britain and a few other countries, there's going to be a panic response, almost certainly. And if we aren't able to create something like a global oil depletion protocol, then I think the overwhelming likelihood is global economic chaos, eventually leading to what I think will be seen in retrospect as the collapse of industrial civilization. Now, collapse is a scary word because if you look back through history, collapses of complex societies, which have happened every time we've had a complex society just about, have been pretty messy and many people have died. However, it's usually not the end of the world. Typically, complex societies dissolve into smaller units. Society continues, but at a lower level of complexity, essentially. I think we're likely to see something like that occur in the world as oil depletion really hits home. Some people, I think, are inevitably going to approach this with a kind of survivalist mentality, trying to save themselves and their families, which I don't think is likely to be very effective. Because if you're, growing your food and you have your nice little house in the country, but your neighbors are starving, well, even if you have a gun, you have to sleep sometime. So the prospects are not good. Ultimately, I think the best survival strategy is going to be a community survival strategy in which communities take it upon themselves to relearn all of the skills that we had in pre-industrial times that enabled people to survive, and then teach those skills to people around them so that it's not a matter of we'll get ours and survive while everybody else dies, but we'll help everyone around us also to survive and thrive so that they can then continue the process and teach those skills to people even further on out. Well, I've been fascinated by the human condition for a long time and tried to understand how the world came to be the way it is. I mean, obviously, we're undermining our own ecological viability. Why would this be? Why would a society go so far out on an ecological limb as to be actually undermining not only its own survival, but that of the rest of the biosphere at the same time? We're an intelligent species that is able to use tools, and we have language so we can communicate our ideas over time and across generations. And we're energy junkies just like every other species. And so we gradually, over the centuries and millennia, found ways of increasing our ability to harvest energy from the environment and thereby build social complexity and increase our share of the takings from the environment. Agriculture, the domestication of animals, building of cities, all of these were stages in the process. And then with fossil fuels, we hit the jackpot. I mean, we've acquired energy sources that far outstrip anything we could have imagined in previous times. Every previous agricultural civilization, you had to have 85–90% of the population working at producing food so that you could produce just a little bit of surplus. Each farmer could produce a little bit of surplus that would enable the rest of the social structure, the full-time specialists in violence, the soldiers, the accountants, the priests, the managerial class, to survive on top of the social pyramid. But with fossil fuels, you only have to have 2% of the population producing the food for everybody else. So you have this explosion of the middle class, and planes, trains, and automobiles, and inventions, and everything we associate with modern life. All of this has come about because of fossil fuels. So once I understood that this is what's been happening, then the question was, well, okay, when do we run out? And of course the answer to that is very disturbing, because it's not really a matter of when we run out, but when we are no longer able to continue the path of growth, when we're no longer able to have more fossil fuels with every passing year to fuel more shopping malls, more cars, more highways. And that time is basically now. Well, I think there's a lot of our culture that's likely not to survive. All of our powered machinery is definitely vulnerable. And most of our information storage media are vulnerable. Electronic storage media of all kinds, everything from laser discs to computer memories. And then most of our paper is acid soaked and has a lifetime of a century or two, probably. So there's a strong likelihood, actually, that unless we make some effort to preserve the information that we've developed and built painstakingly over the last few centuries, it could all pretty much disappear over the course of just a few generations. I think that would be a real shame, because we have, along with all of the crazy things we've done, along with all, building Walmarts and superhighways and space shuttles and all of that, we've also done some useful things. We've figured out how nature works in considerable detail. We figured out what DNA is and how ecologies work and ecosystems. We know how the human body works to a pretty large degree. We know how evolution proceeded. We've decoded the past. We have some sense of what's happened over the last several thousand years, human history, the story of how we got here, and all of this is, I think, useful information to have. And if it were all swept away, I think we'd be very poor, much poorer because of it. Also, we've made a lot of beautiful art, along with all of the ugly stuff we've done, all of the advertising art and the ugly steel and glass buildings. We've also built some beautiful things and written some beautiful music and created some lovely musical instruments and so on. It would be a real shame to see all of that fall by the wayside. But I think we'll have to make some deliberate effort to preserve those things, because if we don't, they will fall away. That's what happens when civilizations collapse. And when previous civilizations have collapsed, there have been people who have made those efforts to preserve. That's what happened with the Mayan civilization, after all. The Mayan civilization collapsed, but the Mayan culture still exists. And much of that culture had to be preserved painstakingly. When the Roman civilization collapsed, the monks of medieval Europe, and particularly in Ireland, had to make the effort to copy those manuscripts and remember how things were done, the tools and technologies that have been developed. Another thing that we desperately need to preserve is seeds. Right now there's a tremendous consolidation of the commercial seed industry, and of course the genetic engineering of food plants. If we don't make the effort, within even 2 or 3 decades, I think the variety of food plants available to human beings could be reduced dramatically by up to 90%.